Hi everyone, my name is Audrey and welcome to my channel. Today I'm giving you my May wrap up.
Knew it from the jump, you were bad news. Eating up my time, leave my mind in the woods. But now you see the face under the red hood. And you cry, now you cry, yeah you cry, yeah you cry, whoa. Oh, you thought I was a little sheep, yeah, yeah. Never noticed how I hit my teeth. Now there ain't nobody that'll hear you. If you cry, if you cry, if you cry, if you cry, whoa. Once upon a time, I would let it slide. Make peace with the feelings until I realized little heroines never get a win. So I had to grow up and grow some thick skin. Now my eyes ain't ballin', only ballin' for the big moves. I can hear you calling, tell me who you gonna cry to. Zip it, baby you're trippin', trippin'. Better remember you're the one who made me wicked, wicked. You're running, I'm coming. I'm finally taking back what's mine. They won't believe it, you'll never see it when I get you in the night. Knew it from the jump, you were bad news. Eating up my time, leave my mind in the woods. But now you see the face under the red hood. And you cry, now you cry, yeah you cry, yeah you cry, whoa. Oh, you thought I was a little sheep, yeah, yeah. Never noticed how I hit my teeth. Now there ain't nobody that'll hear you. If you cry, if you cry, if you cry, if you cry, whoa. Talking that talk, blah, 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 blah. When you give me that toxic, I go off, you can call me selfish. Hella hellish, what you really meant to say is I'm a bad bitch. She's done the girl, whatever girl if you hate me, hate me, hate me. No, you didn't mean to make an enemy, but you did you dirty, underestimating me. Zip it, baby you're trippin', trippin'. Better remember you're the one who made me wicked, wicked. You're regretted, I'm coming. I'm finally taking back what's mine. They won't believe it, you'll never see it when I get you in the night. Knew it from the jump, you were bad news. Eating up my time, leave my mind in the woods. But now you see the face under the red hood. And you cry, now you cry, yeah you cry, yeah you cry, whoa. Oh, you thought I was a little sheep, yeah, yeah. Never noticed how I hit my teeth. Now there ain't nobody that'll hear you. If you cry, if you cry, if you cry, if you cry, whoa. Go and cry, go
So for the month of May, I gave myself a goal to read 8 books and at least 60 pages per day. I had such a successful month. I managed to read 6 books. It's not the 8 that I was aiming at, but 6 is the highest number of books I've ever read in a month. Like all time since 2020. And even before I discovered booktube, like I was reading 1 book every 4 months. So that doesn't even count. I read 6 books this month. I am so happy and so proud of myself. And I've been enjoying most of my reads. So yeah, that's a win. Really happy with this. I am also 1 book ahead in my Goodreads challenge. So far, that can change pretty quickly, but so far, 1 book ahead. And I also managed to read an average of 72 pages per day, which is over my goal of 60 pages per day. So that's awesome. I'm just really happy with that reading. So let's go through all of the books I read in May. So as you know, I participate in the Buzzwordathon hosted by Kayla from Books and Lala, which happens every month. So every month you have a buzzword and you have to read as many books with that buzzword in the title as possible. For the month of May, the buzzword was flavor or seasoning. And for that prompt, I read The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. And this is a very, very short book. I didn't know that beforehand. I actually heard about this book from Kayla on her channel, and she really, really enjoyed it. And spoiler alert, I gave this one a 5 stars. It was really, really good. I've looked at some of the reviews that were 1 star, and like what most people were complaining about is that they felt a little bit too dumb to understand what this is. So this follows this young girl who goes to this place that used to be the exile home of an empress, and she's kind of the equivalent of a monk but for like archival purposes, if that makes sense. So they go there and they try to take in as much of the story, the history of the place, and they try to archive everything and make an inventory of everything that's physically there, the objects and memories and stuff like that, and try to get as much information as possible so that history can be told and that it can stay somewhere written. So yeah, you go back and forth with how it was when the Empress was there and like in today and how they're going into it. And the way that it's written, it's a very, very poetic. I tend to not like over the top poetic writing. This is very poetic. I just don't tend to like this. I remember when I read This Is How You Lose the Time War. I hated that book because it was way too poetic for me and I just didn't get it. And I felt like those reviewers that were reviewing this one, that were saying that they felt too dumb to understand this book. That's how I felt with This Is How You Lose the Time War. So I get that feeling. I get that this is not for everyone, but I don't know why this one really made it for me. Also, it can be a little bit confusing because it's not very clear when you're going in the past or not. They usually have like this little symbol here to indicate that the character is telling a story and reliving this memory or whatever. And so I can understand why some were confused. But yeah, it really did it for me. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's going to be spoilery. I think it's kind of best not knowing too much about the actual story of this and you just go in. But beware that it might not be for you because of the poetic writing style, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is the first book of a series. I think the author is getting the 5th or the 6th one out soon. So I'm really eager to get to the rest of the series because I feel like I'm going to get a lot out of these books. So yeah. For the magical readathon, as I participate in every month, the assigned quest, I had two choices of prompts. The first one was to read a book with an odd number of pages, and the other one was to read a book with an even number of pages. So, like, I read both and I decided to stick with the even number pages because of the prompts that are following those in the next month. So, and for the month of May, as it is the API History Month, I participated in the Asian Readathon that is hosted by Cindy from With Cindy. There were 5 prompts, and the goal is to read from books from as many ethnicities as possible, just to get a little bit more diverse into the Asian culture, because Asia is very, very wide, and we do tend to stick to only like Japan and China, but there are so many Asian authors that we don't check, that we don't seek for, and it is important to read diversely even within the Asian culture community. So if that makes sense. So for that readathon, I managed to read 4 books, but 2 of them were from the same author, same series of books. So, but within all 4 of those books, I managed to accomplish all of the prompts, which I'm really proud of. So the first prompt was to read a book from an Asian author. Very simple, but it's the basic of this readathon. The second prompt was to read a book with a friendship between 2 Asian characters. The third prompt was to read a book that had an adventure from an Asian author or an Asian character. The fourth prompt was to read a book that focuses on identity or self-discovery. And the fifth and final prompt was to read a book that featured an Asian character that was either a hot mess, famous, or eccentric. So let's get into these books. The first book I read was Destroy Me by Tahiri Mafi. Tahiri Mafi is from Iranian descent. Okay, I don't like this series, and I don't like ranting about books that are from a minority community, but I don't think she's a bad writer. I don't think I'm never going to pick up anything from this author ever again. I know she did write some other books that are not from this series, so I'm really open to it. I think she can write. It's just that these books, the idea and the concept of it, love it. I just really don't like the execution of it. I do want to be really honest in my reviews though, so that's why I'm going to talk about it, but like, take it with a grain of salt. Also, these books are YA, and they are not targeted toward me, so that is also to be considered when checking these reviews. And it is a product of its time, because dystopian subgenre was a huge thing a couple of years back. And as much as I love some dystopians, I find it hard to find really good dystopians, and I'm very picky when it comes to that, because they tend to not be coherent, and like they make no sense to me, and there's always some conspiracy plan that is so far-fetched that it's hard to believe and it's hard to get into, if that kind of makes sense. So this one makes no exception. I feel like it didn't age well either, because it's not a newer series as well. So take all that into consideration. I am still reading them. Yes. Why? Because I do have a bundle with the first 3 books of the trilogy, plus the 2 novellas that are between book 1 and book 2. So in May, I read book number 1.5, which was Destroy Me, and book number 2, which is Unravel Me. So, if you don't know what this series is about, you follow Juliet, who has this power to kill people when she touches them, which is not great. It's not a great superpower. It's very dangerous. So, her parents locked her up, and she was in an asylum for a couple of years. She's now 16 or 17 years old, and the world in which we live in is contaminated by pollution and all of that. And there was this movement called the Reestablishment that was supposed to help temporarily with the world crisis situation, but it ended up being a permanent solution, and it's not a great government type of situation. And a sector of the Reestablishment has taken a lot of interest into Juliet and her powers, and they want to make her a weapon. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it. So we follow pretty much the point of view of Juliet, and she also meets someone, a soldier that she touches but won't be affected by her killing powers. So that also makes some interesting stuff. So like the concept is really interesting, but I didn't like the first book, which was Shatter Me. I think I gave it a 2 stars. I find the main character very annoying. I cannot stand her. But to the author's credit, she does sound like a 16, 17-year old. She does act like a 16, 17-year old. So, like, prompts to that, because there's a lot of YA that you read where characters act like they're 20, 25 years old, and I hate that. It's very close to the character's age, so that's a plus. I think that's the reason why I gave it a 2 stars instead of one. But it's so annoying, very redundant. You have all of Juliet's thought all the time, and I feel like the author's wanting to make Juliet a gray character, not knowing what to do when she's indecisive, and she doubts herself, and she's always like thinking yes but that, and yes but that, and she's like always like on the line on like which side to take, which I understand that's what she's trying to do, but that's not how it came out. I feel like it wasn't written well enough to be able to pull that off. And it was just so tedious to read again and again and again. Those thoughts that were not adding much to the plot, to the story, to the character. So that's why I feel like it ended up making this character very annoying. There were a lot of incoherence throughout the book, and there still are through Unravel Me. I did like the premise of Unravel Me, where they were. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's a sequel, but in Unravel Me, they end up in a place, and I loved that setting. It kind of reminded me of a part in The Hunger Games. So I liked that setting, but like where it went, yeah, but not so sure. I'm curious to see where it's going to go after the second book. And the book, the novella that's in between Shatter Me and Unravel Me, that book I gave 1 star because you're following the POV of the leader of the sector who is falling in love with Juliet, and his point of view did not add anything at all. I think the author was trying to make him a little bit more human, a little bit more relatable to the reader, and it's so problematic. This character is so problematic, narcissistic, abusive. It's getting romanticized, and I do not like that at all. I get what she was trying to do, but it was so problematic that it didn't do it for me. I was angry. And it didn't add much. Like, I don't know how this point of view made me understand that character more. It doesn't. It's just excuses and victimization, which I hate. So yeah, I had a really hard time with that one. Though there is one part of that novella where you do see like entries of a journal and entries of some files, and that part was actually quite interesting. So I think she would have pulled that off better if the novella was fully in the files format instead of like following the POV of this character, if that makes sense. Anyways, I would have enjoyed it more. And I don't understand honestly how people are like team Warner. I don't get it. And I've seen reviews from booktubers like 9 years ago. So this is a very old book, but um yeah, from 9 years ago that were, yes, I'm teen Warner, and I get it. It did not age well because 10 years ago we wouldn't, like, the Me Too movement wasn't there yet. It was a different time, a different era. So I get that. But I've seen reviewers that I trust on BookTube praising these books, and mm, mm, yeah, I was a little bit disappointed. But again, like I said before, it is a product of its time, and it didn't age well. So teens probably at that time didn't see anything problematic with it, which is totally understandable. So yeah, but like to this day, I couldn't stand it at all. So I am going to continue it. We'll see how it goes. I'm still very curious to see like how it's going to end, how it's where it's going to go. There are 3 more books after that. I don't know if I'm going to get to them. But so far I just have 2 more books and then I'll be done with the first trilogy. I'm very disappointed because I would have liked this if the execution would have been there and there weren't as many problematic stuff in there. Anyways, that said, I'm still going to check out what this author is going to put out there next. Um, I think she published one a couple of years ago, which I was interested in. I don't remember the title, but I'm not striking that author at all. It's just, yeah. I gave Destroy Me 1 star, and then I gave Unravel Me 2 stars. The next book I read for this readathon was Spy Family Volume 2 by Tatsuya Endo. I love this manga series. I just bought book number 3 and number 4, so hopefully I'll get into them quickly. This follows a spy, and he needs to get under to prevent a political war, and his interests are part of this elite academy school. So he goes and adopts himself a child in order to get her into that school, and he finds himself a wife. His wife is an assassin, and his child is telepathic. So she can read minds. She knows that her adoptive father is a spy and her mother is an adoptive mother is an assassin, but the others don't know of each other. So it makes fun situations. It's funny, it's cute. I love it. I strongly recommend it. I gave this one a 5 stars. I'm loving where it's going, and I have a feeling that I'm going to love the next volumes even more than the first ones. And obviously, the Tatsuo Endo is from Japan, which is another different country. The next book I read for this readathon was Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. I don't know the ethnicity of Gina Chen. I haven't found that information online, so I don't know. But this is my Fairloot edition with the beautifully sprayed edges. I had no expectations with this book. This follows a young girl who is a seer. She has abilities where she can see past threads as well as the future and make predictions. And she works for the king. And the prince is trying to find a suitor to marry to take over to the crown. Violet, our main character, and the prince, they pretty much hate each other. And the seer that was there before Violet, she made an awful prediction where they're going to be cursed. So there's all of that, trying to uncurse everything by getting the prince to marry and stuff like that. And I didn't have much expectations for this, but I ended up enjoying it so much. I feel like this is more like a romance fantasy ish. I've seen people not like this. So I've checked some reviews of this book as well. Why did some people rate it 1 star? And I found that some people did not like the romance. I, on the other hand, hate romance. I don't tend to read them. I don't mind it if it's part of the plot, but it's not the main thing. But it's a huge part of this book, and I ate it up so much. I don't want to say what type of romance trope it is because I don't want to spoil it, but it is kind of predictable though. But I loved it so much, and I've seen reviews saying, "Well, that's not what this trope is about," and honestly, I don't get it because I thought that's what it was about. So, like, I don't understand. I ate it up so much. It was good. It's not like steamy, spicy. It is YA, but um, I really enjoyed it. It did have LGBTQ plus rep in this as well, but it was like it was just there for being there. It's not like it wasn't about like coming out or bring awareness or stuff like that. It was just there because it's just natural. No one questioned it, and I love when books do that. It was just there because it's just normal and natural, and like who cares? It's not a big deal. Um I love that. I really did. I enjoyed the political intrigue. I enjoyed the characters. I really did. I know some people didn't connect to them, so but I did. I loved the relationships between the characters. It's a very character driven book though. So if you're more into plot driven stories, maybe not pick this one up. But I read it really quickly in a couple of days. I just couldn't put it down. I'm really curious to get to the second book. Yeah, the world is really interesting as well. Very interesting magic system. There was a lot of mysteries. Violet also heard a lot of voices that she thought were the fates or the gods, and it's not exactly an unreliable narrator because it wasn't that, but some things are really unreliable in here, and it was tricky, and I liked that. It was really mysterious. Also, there was a lot of mystery on what was actually going on and what was happening, which I enjoyed. So, yeah, I ended up giving this one a 4 stars out of 5. I don't think it quite had that 5 star feel. Um, it's also YA, so not targeted toward me, but I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. And it's like the first romancy book I really enjoyed that much. So that's saying something. And the final book I read for this month was The Adventures. Sorry, I ran out of space. So this is her new trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. Her newest book, I've heard so many great things about it, and I was not disappointed. This follows Amina Al Sarafi, who is a retired pirate, and she retired to take care of her child, her daughter, and she is hired for a job that she cannot say no to because the reward is life changing and things do not go as planned. This book is so good. Shannon Chakraborty is now one of my favorite authors ever. Top tier. You know how much I love the Devabad trilogy. It was so good. I drank those books up like so much. Love the characters, love the adventures and the world. And this one actually has a character from the Devabad trilogy. So the world's kind of it's in within the same world ish, but this is set way before the David trilogy happens, from what I understand. So I love the quest part. I love the quest type of writing in here. I love how Our main character, Amina, is so sassy and funny, because there are some parts where there's someone who's transcribing her stories and she's telling them, and she makes some remarks to the person who's writing everything down, um, which I find really funny. And the way that she tells it, how everything happens, and some commentary that she says that she thinks that are just hilarious. And I love this. Getting the crew back together 10 years after retirement and trying to fulfill this job. And so many things happen that were not supposed to happen. Um, Amazing. I love this. I really, really enjoyed it. Shannon Chakraborty can do no wrong for me. So I gave this an easy 6 stars. One of my all-time new favorites. Cannot wait to get to the second book. Um, Strongly recommend. So that is it for the Asian readathon. So basically, we had for the prompts, The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi is not from an Asian author because Shannon Chakraborty married into that name, but it is set in the Middle East. So it does have friendship between two Asian characters. It does have, so prompt number 2. Prompt number 3, it is an adventure. Can't be more of an adventure than that. And then prompt number 5, featuring an Asian character that is a hot mess or famous, because she is quite famous. She's a very renowned pirate, so that fits that prompt as well. So 2, 3, and 5. Then we have Tahiri Mafi, whose books fit prompt number 1, which is an Asian author. Number 4, self-discovery, identity, and an Asian character that is a hot mess. So really, with those 2 books, I've pretty much fulfilled all of the prompts. But The Empress of Salt and Fortune is also written by an Asian author, does feature friendship between 2 Asian characters. I wouldn't say that there's an adventure, but from what it said on Stargraph, it would. I don't totally agree with that, but it's fine. Then we had Spy Family, which fits the first prompt, which is an Asian author. Friendship between 2 Asian characters as well. It is an adventure. I consider it an adventure because it is a spy mission. Let's not forget. Then it also fits the prompt of Asian characters that are a hot mess, because they are a hot mess, pretty much. Also, the spy is pretty famous as well, so there's that. And finally, the in Violet Made of Thorns, it is written by an Asian author. Even if I'm not sure where she's from, she does have an Asian name. It does focus on identity and self-discovery, as well as it features Asian characters that are a hot mess and famous and eccentric, because it's all of those 3. Those were the books I read in May. I'm really happy with what I've read, except for the Shatter Me books, but that's not entirely true. I am glad that I read them, that I can make my own mind on them, even if like I don't enjoy them that much. But it's really fine. Great reading month. Really proud of myself. So let me know if you've read any of these books. What did you think of them? Do you agree with me or not? I would love to know. Like, comment, and subscribe if you wish. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new video, and I will see you soon in the next one.